All right, and joining me today is the women's bantamweight champ of the UFC, Raquel Pennington. So, Raquel, first of all, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, you bet.
All
How
right,
are
so
you?
I'm great. Now, I wanted to ask you because we're 2 months removed from you basically achieving a dream that so many people have. You've had for a really long time. It wasn't like it was a short climb to the top for you. 2 months in, has it set in? Do you like feel the magnitude of it now?
Absolutely. It's finally soaking in. I've been busy. My lifestyle has definitely gotten I've already had a busy lifestyle, and now it's about 500 times more busy. Um, but at first it was really hard for it to soak in. I got sick during fight week, and then just kind of going through the fight. And then coming home, and I was sick until the last week of February or so. So it was just like when you're not feeling well, like you don't really care to think about anything else. And it was crazy because it's like, I've accomplished the ultimate goal. And like you said, most people dream about. I've had the opportunity to get out there a second time and fight for it, which I'm truly grateful for. But being in this sport, I mean, you sit here and you dream about it, and that's what most athletes are going to do. They don't even get that opportunity, and that's just the reality of it. So going through that and then feeling the way that I felt for a long time, it was like, man, this kind of sucks. But after I started feeling better, kind of got back into the gym, got back into my routine and everything else, it definitely soaked in. Been doing a lot of meet and greets, guest speakings, all kinds of different things, and just being around everybody, seeing their love and support, seeing the excitement coming from everybody, the excitement of the kids. That's really like just really, really set things in.
That's awesome to hear. Now, before I get to talking about more of that kind of stuff, I want to ask about the illness leading up to the fight because, I think that's something that maybe wasn't out there all that much. I'm sure you didn't want it out there heading into the fight all that much. So, what are we talking about? Was it, did you have the flu? Did you have like head colds? Like, were we talking about like real bad stuff? Like, how bad were
So
we off?
we were flying out Tuesday before the fight to Canada. We were at the airport. Our travel got delayed. It was a mess. My luggage got lost. It just turned into the longest day. And while we were at the airport, I started feeling. It was actually the night before I started feeling like my throat was hurting a little bit, and I was like, okay, I need to jump on this. But going through my thyroid issue with USADA and everything, and the doctors following me with everything, and putting me on medication, then all of a sudden I'm getting suspended for it all. I don't take anything anymore. But so I went to the store that night and I got some throat coat tea and I started drinking it. Then the next day while we were sitting at the airport, it was progressively getting worse. And I started getting a little cough with it. So then I called UFC and I'm like, hey, like, what can I take? And then it just turned into one thing after another. I ended up getting to Canada. They're like, hey, we need to test you for COVID, RSV, and the flu. And I was like, we're not testing. Like, we cannot test being in Canada for one. And for two, like, okay, if I'm sick, then, or like, if I have any of that, then what's going to happen? You know what I mean? Um, so it was just like, it was stressful. They ended up giving me some medication and they're like, you should feel a little bit better. But then I think just going through a weight cut, I broke down my immune system. I never sleep the night of a weight cut. So the lack of sleep, then losing all the weight. I woke up or I got up Friday morning, went to weigh-ins, and I felt miserable, but I put my game face on. Between the official weigh-ins and ceremonial weigh-ins, I slept, and then I got up and we went to a team dinner, and I didn't have an appetite. Like, I didn't recover like normal. And then the morning of the fight, normally you wake up, all these emotions, all these nerves, the adrenaline, excitement, like it's a roller coaster. I woke up super early because I wasn't feeling well. I was coughing. I was spitting up really green mucus. I couldn't even breathe. I felt like I had razor blades in the back of my throat. I had a migraine. I had pressure in my face already, and I was like, "Oh, this is great. Like, I'm supposed to go get into a fight tonight." Tisha ended up waking up and she's like, "Happy fight day. How are you feeling?" And the minute I started speaking, like you could just tell. And I was like, "Tisha, I don't think I can fight." And needless to say, my entire day, it was a good thing I had a late call time to the arena because my entire day was spent with my coaches, my sports psychologist. We were just trying to get get myself together, I guess. And then I'll tell you what, I was warming up and it was like, oh gosh, like I ended up really nervous with the fact that it was like, okay, if I have to go 25 minutes, like, am I going to be able to breathe through this? And I had a great camp. Conditioning was great. Everything was great. So it was just really frustrating. I had another mountain to climb, and while they were introducing us and I'm standing in the octagon, I tell you what, I was as flat as can be. And I told my coaches, I was like, this is going to hurt. And they're like, hey, we do not care what this fight looks like. We just need you to get the job done. Drag her in deep waters and win that belt. And I was like, okay. And so the rest is history. There we went.
I love it. Now, you mentioned kind of in that answer, there was a lot of inherent, talk about a worry about not getting another shot, right? You mentioned before, not a lot of people get a second shot. You mentioned here, what happens if I'm sick? I'm not getting out of this fight, right? Like, I want to be a part of this. Leading into when they offered you this fight, there was lots of talk about different people for the women's bantamweight title after Amanda let it go. Were you sure you were going to be a part of this all along? Did you know the second one was coming, or was this kind of been a worry in the back of your mind for a long time that time number two doesn't come for everybody?
No, when I was fighting Ketlin Vera, it was supposed to be a number one contender fight, and then that got pushed out. And then I figured it'd be me next, and then all of a sudden it turned into, hey, you're gonna rematch Irene Aldana, which made no sense to me because I already beat her. I was ranked number 2, she was 5. And they're like, we're giving Juliana a third shot, and it was just like, dude, nobody cares. And they were like, hey, listen, love her or hate her, everybody will love watching her get her ass beat for 5 rounds. And it was just like, okay, like, whatever, that might be the truth, but in reality, like, it was still frustrating being the athlete waiting there and them continuously saying one thing after another and it not happening. So I knew for a while, like, it was coming. It's just, when was it actually going to happen?
Well, that's good to hear. Now, I want to ask you now about the future too. But before we do, we should talk a little bit of UFC 300 because that's just about a week away at our time of talking. There's obviously a fight that really could potentially matter to you on that card, right? Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison is a fight that I think a lot of people have circled as being one of interest for the women's bantamweight division. So give us a little breakdown. How do you see that fight going? Do you believe Kayla Harrison's grappling is the answer to Holly Holm?
It's kind of one of those things. I think Kayla, obviously, she's extremely good at her judo and into grappling, but it's almost like Ronda Rousey, if you throw your hands and let your striking go, it kind of exposes that weakness of theirs. And I think she truly had that challenge with Larissa Pacheco on the PFL, and it was not a great night for her. With that being said, Holly, her last few fights, I mean, she hasn't been the Holly Holm that came into the UFC really letting her striking go. If she turns around and brings that girl into the octagon, she can definitely beat Kayla. If she just tries to turn it into her hugging match that she's been doing, she's walking right into Kayla's ball game right there. And so, I mean, a fight's a fight. It can go either way. But I think, honestly, it just depends on if Holly wants to let her hands go or not.
I totally agree on that one. Now, you kind of downplayed the way that she's been fighting lately, and some of that was the fight against you, I'm assuming as well. But, like the Kayla Harrison, you're sort of writing off her judo. Do you feel that these two are fighting for the number one contendership? Do you think that these two should be the ones who are next?
So here's the deal. Like, I've been in the UFC for a really long time. I was never handed anything, and I've had to work from the ground up to get to where I'm at. So being that athlete who was never handed anything, who never fast tracked and had to keep going and going and going, there are a ton of women in this division that have been busting their ass, and they deserve the opportunity before Kayla, who comes into the UFC, has a huge name behind her, and stuff like that. I don't find it fair for them to turn around and fast track her, but on the business aspect, I see it. So, I mean, either way, but as far as being an athlete, like, I don't think it's fair to the other ones, but I'm not opposed to fighting anybody. So,
well, let's talk about some of those other ones too, then, because you already mentioned Juliana Pena. People like watching her get punched in the face. Is that a fight that interests you as well? Do you feel like that one sort of moves the needle?
that's the fight that I've been waiting for 13 years. I figured the Ultimate Fighter, her and I would fight in the finale. When I won fight of the season, I sustained some injuries. So when I went into what was it, the semifinals, I ended up losing in that fight. And I figured, I mean, that was 11 years ago. So I figured it would have happened somewhere in there, but somehow that fight's never aligned. And so for my team and I, Juliana's the one that we have in mind next.
I like it. Now, do you have other names that you want to just drop in there that are kind of, interesting to you? Throw some shine to some of the women who, like you said, have been going at it for a while and sort of have earned their right to talk about being in this top echelon?
Honestly, any of them. Everybody brings a different challenge to the table. I love challenges. And I mean, a fight's a fight. So any of them, I'm not opposed to any of them. But for me, like I said, I mean, Juliana's the one that I have in sight. But we'll see. We'll see how business plays out.
Well, I'd obviously love to see you punch her in the face a little bit. So, I usually end these with a prediction, but you obviously don't have a fight coming up right away. So, do you want to give me a timeline? When can we expect to see Raquel Pennington's first title defense?
Well, right now, so mid camp of that last fight, I ended up getting stem cell on my shoulder. So I'm currently taking the time to properly rehab that. Tisha's now in fight camp. She fights May 11th and is making her return after 2 years off. So we've kind of flipped roles. While I was in camp, she was holding down the fort. She was playing mama or mommy and doing everything. And so now it's me. I got the mama role and I'm hanging out with the baby, doing rehab, and Tisha's getting ready to shine. After that, the baby turns 1 in June. And so I just kind of want to enjoy some family time. And really, honestly, it just depends on my shoulder and stuff. So I'm looking probably not until around like September, October.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, I said I like to end these with a prediction. So then give me a prediction. Tisha Pennington, I understand she's now going by Tisha Pennington fighting Tabitha Ritchie. Give me the prediction on that one.
Listen, I am super excited for this fight. I told Tisha, I was like, it was crazy because we came home from Canada after my fight. I'm absolutely exhausted. I'm not feeling well. The last thing I want to think about is fighting. And she was just inspired with me winning the world title. She reached out, she got the fight, and she's like, hey, we're going to sit here and watch film. And I told her, I was like, listen here, like, I'm even more exhausted watching this film because for one, you're finally fighting somebody your size. You're fighting somebody with the same exact physique as you. And you both, like, their gas tanks are insane. Like, this fight is just going to be absolutely exhausting to watch. But with that being said, not just because Tisha's my wife, I feel like Tisha has a lot more experience. She's a veteran of the sport. A lot of people are doubting her just because she's taken 2 years off, but I'll tell you what, like, she's coming back with a different strength behind her, different motivation. And she's had the talent, all these years. I do feel like Tabitha is still pretty green. She can definitely, like, she's going to climb and she's going to excel. But I think with the matchup with Tisha, it's going to be a good night for Tisha, but it's going to be a great fight.
Well, we certainly can't wait for it, and we appreciate the time. Once again, fans, this has been the UFC Bantamweight champion, Raquel Pennington. Raquel, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It was good talking to you.